and welcome to the Music Business Buddy with me, Johnny Amos, podcasting out of Birmingham in England. I am the author of the book, The Music Business for Music Creators. I'm a music creator myself. I'm also an industry consultant, an artist manager, and a senior lecturer in both music business and music creation. Wherever you are, whatever you do, consider yourself welcome to this podcast and to a part of the community around it. My goal is simple, everybody, to try and inspire and educate music creators from all over the world in their goals by gaining a greater understanding of the business of music. Okay, so I am joined this week by a fantastic guest by the name of Jack McCarthy from IndieX. IndieX are a music marketing agency. They are a part of Indiepreneur, for anybody that's familiar with that work. Jack is a fascinating guy, right? He comes at this from a kind of music creator angle because he is a music producer himself. He's seen all sorts of different sides of the music industry. And, you know, he spotted a little gap in the market, right, to build something. And what he really focuses in on is how to capture attention, how to collect that data, how to bottle it up into a business, right? And he does it absolutely superbly. So he's a thoroughly nice guy. I'm going to hand over to the interview now. Take note and enjoy. Jack, welcome to the Music Business Buddy. First and foremost, how are you?
Thanks, Johnny. Thanks for having me here. I'm doing great. Really appreciate you having me on the show today. I'm very excited.
Oh, you're kidding me, man. I've watched you in videos online before. I'm very familiar with what you do, what you've built, and how you go about what you do. And and here I am, just like talking to you now. It's great, man. It's wonderful. The power.
I love it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's great. Well, I'd like to start by saying this, Jack. A massive congratulations, right, for everything that you've built at IndieX. It really is an honor to talk with you and to get to know you and understand your work a little better. You spotted a revenue gap, right, and you acted on it. Tell us a little bit about how IndieX got started.
Yeah, for sure. And first, I want to say again, thanks for having me, and I so appreciate the kind words. It's really nice.
Oh, man, it's deserved.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. So, Indiepreneur, as a the larger company that IndieX exists under, the agency itself started when my business partner Kyle was starting Indiepreneur, and he was teaching artists, showing them the ropes with digital marketing and kind of showing them the way. And then some were starting to ask for more hands-on kind of help. And that was the first birth of the agency, IndieX, the kind of fledgling agency. Within a year or so, I came around as a partner and started leading the agency. And that was around the time that we noticed with a lot of the larger artists that we work with or we're talking to, they all had this common thread of e-commerce revenue being left on the table when compared to what other online businesses and brands and other industries were doing. And we saw that, and it kind of made us scratch our head and go, that's really interesting. It was a point to notice that the music industry was kind of behind in this and not paying attention to it. So we really made that the core of our service to solve for that gap at IndieX. So that was how we sort of spotted the revenue gap and kind of went full steam ahead into tackling it from the jump. This was, within a year or so of the agency being born and me getting involved.
Wow, interesting. Do you know, you've struck upon several different interesting little facets there. One of the things that really fascinates me, Jack, is when we kind of step back a little bit and just absorb what else is going on, especially in other areas of the creative industries, in film and television in particular, and just go, what can we take from that and apply to the music world? That's something that's always fascinated me.
Yeah.
And that's a part of what you were saying, I guess.
For sure. Yeah. And even going beyond creative industries, we were looking at, direct to consumer online brands selling really anything online, and just businesses that were applying digital marketing in ways that were innovative and really helping them drive core revenue and profit in their businesses. And we looked at the music industry and we were like, man, this is like 10 years behind.
Wow.
And so when we thought about that, then we started applying it to the music industry and really other creative industries as well. And starting to see what can be taken from what can you learn from other businesses? And I think that that's a core thing about business in general, really. When you think about it, it's like you can look across the aisle at a completely different industry or a completely different business type and probably find something to learn and apply to your own business. Maybe not one to one, but if you find a gap and you see somebody else doing something about it in a completely different lane, there might be something to it. And that's something that I love to talk about.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a fascinating subject, especially on a sort of macro level understanding in the way you're putting it there. I mean, you could even maybe apply it on a more of a micro level within the music industry. For instance, there's times where, I manage an artist in the EDM world, and sometimes the things that some of the EDM labels do in terms of how they structure their deals and whatnot, and I think, oh, I wonder if that could work in rock and metal in the same way as it does there, you know. So it's so useful to draw comparisons. I'd love to develop a more thorough understanding of your philosophy, right? Because a lot of people hope to kind of build an artist-centered ecosystem that empowers creators to take that sense of accountability and build power with what they've got. But you've actually done something about it, right? So, how do you help artists to see themselves as a business? Because that's a big shift sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And that's a great question and a really good point. The starting place that I like to point to is when we talk about fans, a fan base as defined in music, it's often really nebulous. It's very non-specific. You have fans, they're a big bunch of people. We encourage artists, our clients, to look at it really specifically, more granular. You think about fans, a fan base being audiences, people you can reach, and sometimes that's with social media, online. You have contacts. Those are your subscribers, your email list, your text list, people that you can actually shoot a message over to, reach out in a one-to-one sort of way. And then you have customers, right? People who actually transact with you directly. And then you have repeat customers, which is different from, someone who just bought from you once. These are people that are coming back over and over and over again, ideally. And that kind of shift from an amorphous sort of nebulous idea of a fan base and what it can or can't do with you, and a relationship-based audience where you can break down, here's my people, here's where they exist, sort of across these different stages of relationship with me as a creative and me as a business. All of a sudden, when you start thinking about it that way, for one, you're now taking what used to be a nebulous mass of people and you're breaking it down into like, what do these individual people do with me? How do they interact with me? All of a sudden, it becomes very personal, very specific. And what's cool about that is when you do that, you can start to actually make change in your business. You can start to do things that move people from one stage to another. You can say, well, I've got a lot of people who are starting to become aware of me, but I can't reach them. So I should do something about that. I should probably offer them something to get their contact info. Or I've got a lot of people who have come to my shows and I've got their contact info, but they've only really bought tickets. They've never bought anything from me online. Maybe they've never even bought merch at a show. I could do something about that. I can reach out to them. And that drives real business change, right? That's how you start to think about yourself as a business. Suddenly, you're going from thinking about your fan base as, just a blob to actual people across, a varying stages of relationship. And then the clouds start to part and you can suddenly see, well, okay, I can actually do something with this information. I can do something with these people. I can interact with them. I can go out to them and do something active as opposed to just hoping that something will happen. And that's probably the two biggest shifts that I encourage artists to take when they start to think this way. You start to think like an actual business would, knowing like, what am I doing to actually get customers in the door? If you think about it like a business that might be, on the corner in your neighborhood.
Yeah, very good point. Yeah, fan base ownership, right? That's the kind of the core kind of central subject
Yep.
there. Um, Everything you're saying makes absolutely perfect sense, but I'm trying to think of a way in which artists, especially, can begin to convert what that looks like. You mentioned there about the idea of saying, somebody's bought tickets, but not quite sure whether they've engaged with anything else that I've done or any merch that that I've created, that kind of thing. So let's think about those steps into making that sort of data and fan ownership of reality. Does it start on a sort of grassroots level in terms of, at the live shows, collecting email addresses, that kind of thing?
Oh, it certainly can. And I mean, for so many artists that are getting started, a lot of times that's where the mailing list was born. If you think about it, but even before there was email, there were artists that were collecting addresses at their shows. I was just speaking with a manager a couple weeks ago, and he was telling me about, back on the road in the early 90s when they were just starting to, basically just starting to make the migration from we're going to have physical mailing addresses to having email addresses. They were collecting both, and they were stuffing
Wow.
mailers, after their tours to try and get people out to their next shows when they were coming to town. So that's, historically speaking, yeah, 100%. That's a great place for it to start. But I think what's interesting here is, for a lot of the larger artists, especially that we work with at IndieX, so often we'll get into discussions with the artists, their managers, their teams, and what we find is the audience data, this fan base data, it's very often fragmented to start. The store is owned by this third party provider that we've hired out or we've licensed our merch to. The email list used to be controlled by the label, and now there's not a label anymore, or we changed labels and now we don't know where it is. Things like this. So the first step is trying to consolidate as much of that information as you can. And I think the steps vary from artist to artist, from client to client for us on where we go. And a lot of times the process that we take to understand this is really just taking stock of what you have to begin with. For an artist that's just starting out, you've got a social media following, for example, online. The first thing you can do is start making direct kind of conversational offers to them to be like, hey, we're going to be going on the road soon, for example. Would you like to be, in the know when we come to your city? Or would you like us to come to your city? Almost like hey, if you hook me up with your email and maybe your phone number and let me know what city you're in, like that will let me know whether I should plan my tour there. A lot of artists start with something like that as far as building up their database, and they do it online. They reach out to these people directly, the ones who are engaging with them the most online. Others, who are often very prolific at creating music and releasing music, something that we often encourage those types of artists to do is, run advertisements or create content around early access and use that as a little bribe to start building up that list and migrating those fans from, the social sphere online, which is really, it's like earned audiences. You don't own it because Instagram could go away tomorrow or TikTok could go away tomorrow and all of a sudden all those people are gone, to owned audiences, your list, your text list, your email list. That's the process for doing that. Again, that's like another type of artist who's starting to build up traction. For a larger artist who's got a big old fan base, a lot of times what we recommend, especially when we're starting to work with somebody for the first time and helping them kind of consolidate, is like, all right, let's look at your online store. How many customers do you have in there? Great. That's your baseline starting point for this sort of consolidation. Let's see what we can pull for your email list. Do you have anything? Can we pull those together? Can we bring them into a single source of truth? There's so many options for tech platforms to allow you to do this. Tools like Drip, for example, an email marketing platform, or Klaviyo. These are really popular ones that big brands all over the world are using for this kind of thing. Building a CRM, for example. That's the kind of thing that we help to build for artists so that they've got everything kind of under one house. So it varies from artist to artist, and where you get started kind of depends on where you're starting from, if that makes sense. Maybe a little bit of a cop out of an answer, but I wanted to be as comprehensive as possible because it really does vary. What we do is when we start working with a client at the agency, we take a look sort of across all of these stages of relationship, and we look to see, all right, how many people can we actually count in these areas, and then where do they live? Where do we find them? Are they on an email list that was previously owned by a record label or a management company or something? Can we get access to that? Can we bring it all into one place? How do we consolidate it? That's usually some of the first and biggest parts of our work, is to just figure out, where do all these pieces connect, and can we bring them together? And if we can, great. And if we can't, then we've got a little bit of work to do. And that's kind of like oftentimes our first and most initial process when we work with a new artist.
Fascinating. Wow. Thank you. Most certainly not a cop-out answer, Jack. That was very, very well detailed. Thank you very much.
You let me be nerdy, so I appreciate it.
Nerd away, mate. It's all good. Excuse me. Do you know, it makes perfect sense what you're saying, because I suppose it depends what level an artist is at. I mean, especially over the last 2 or 3 years, I've, I talked to a lot of different artist managers and artists as well, myself directly. And goodness me, the amount of artists that are coming out of, deals, not even particularly long-term deals, sometimes just like 2 EPs and an album or something like that with a record company, and then coming out of it and going, do you know what? That experience was okay, but it's kind of made me realize that I need to kind of be a little bit more on top of ownership. And if I want to be still communicating with and reaching those same people that I've seen on the road over the last year, then, I do need to do a little bit more here, be a bit more proactive, which, of course, it falls in line with what you were saying. I've heard you refer to wanting to see artists get off the revenue roller coaster. Would you mind expanding a little on that for me, Jack?
Yeah, absolutely. Revenue roller coaster is a term that I love to use when I'm speaking with artists and managers, specifically ones who are interested in working with us at our agency. Something that we put a lot of focus on is, we know that, and this goes back to your question about the money being left on the table, or the revenue gap that we recognized at our company. And what we found was a lot of artists live sort of in these spikes of, I launched an album or an EP or whatever. I launched something, revenue spike down. There's roller coaster number one. I'm going on tour, revenue spike. Tour ends, revenue spike, back down. And, you fill that in a little bit with some streaming royalties and maybe some sync licensing deals and things like that, depending on what you're working on. But those are big revenue spikes that happen in these milestone moments. And a lot of what we focus on at our company is helping artists kind of level this out with marketing campaigns that happen all year round around their e-commerce, kind of building promotional calendars that happen all the time, kind of creating this always on marketing process where you can lean into things like holidays, even just created holidays, the anniversaries of your records, the band's birthday, your lead singer's birthday, whatever. You can make it up. You can make up so much stuff, merch drops, all these things that you can fill in the gaps of, the larger milestone moments in a music career with other things that can be very profitable. And it allows you to build more consistent revenue beyond just the spikes that happen at big moments. And being able to do that allows you more financial freedom in the business, more cash flow in the business, to then be able to expand your marketing, to be able to do more extensive things at the milestone moments and kind of connect all of this together so that you're not just, going dark between these sort of milestones or these bigger career tentpole moments. And that's really important, both from a fan base and audience retention point of view, keeping people's attention, keeping it sort of captured, because attention is currency right now, especially online. If you can keep a fan base interested in what you've got going on, that's amazing. But, one way to lose attention is just to put a record out, promote it for a little while, and then sort of go off back into the studio, disappear, come back, go on tour, disappear for a while again. If you can stay active in what you're doing and in the process be monetizing, you've got a winning formula. So that's a lot of what we focus on with our clients.
Very good. I love that. The revenue roller coaster makes perfect sense. Jack,
it's not a fun roller coaster to be on. You don't want to be on. You don't want to be on that ride.
No. I'm scared of roller coasters anyway, so that's fine. Do you know, you are very impressive. I'm just thinking of the things that you were saying there about that kind of filling in some of those gaps and whatnot. I was drawing immediate links to some of the things that I've been talking about to people recently on and off the podcast. One is artist managers who say exactly what you just said about, kind of not having artists working seasons, let's say, right? And just kind of being a little bit more on it with brand marketing and stuff, which falls in line with trying to fill those revenue gaps, if you will. And the other thing, I've been doing a big deep dive on fintech recently and catalog acquisition. And, that's kind of their thing, right? Where, they'll look at rights, whether it's on publishing side or on the master side, and just go, right, actually streaming creates once an artist has caught the algorithm and their music gets introduced algorithmically to a new and existing audience, then the revenue just kind of plateaus in a good way, rather than it spiking and going in between big editorial playlists and whatnot. So, and that's something that makes data a lot more investable when there's that sort of fluidity to it. And it, makes sense.
Absolutely. Streaming, I think, a lot of people love to talk about the tug of war between streaming as a monetization vehicle in a music career and other things, whether it be e-commerce like we're talking about here, or touring, or deals, licensing, whatever. I like to say streaming it's a necessary evil, right? Fans are streaming music. If you can make some money off of that and it provides you with a baseline, great. Can you control it? Not really. And that's okay. But can it provide you with revenue? Yeah, totally. And I hope that it does. And then what you can do is you can do all of these other active things that we've been talking about to drive more revenue. And it's kind of the difference between like passive versus active investing, really.
Yeah, totally. And also, what comes with that streaming data is an absolute treasure chest of data, which can be used to inform various other different aspects. Sometimes I know that there's a narrative sometimes to go, oh, well, streaming doesn't make money. And I think to myself, well, first of all, it does. To a certain extent, but it's not just about that, is it? It's about the other things that come with it, the introduction to other, whether it's ticket sales or merch drops, as you say, or, leverage points of data to be able to use that and go, right, now that we've done this over here, we can go and talk to those partners about doing that thing over there, and so on and so forth. So, no, it makes a lot of sense what you're saying. Jack, can I ask about you a little bit more? How did all this start for you? What was your journey into music, right? Because you're a music producer, right?
I've been a producer, a songwriter, a guitar player, a singer my whole life.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, I've been doing music since before I can remember.
Really?
I've been making music for a very, very long time. I love music so much, but I've been recording music since probably I was around 11 years old. I started recording on like a 4-track cassette recorder, got into digital recording, studied production in university, and then got on the road actually, doing guitar tech work, touring guitar work after college. And my journey into music marketing and digital marketing is actually really strange. I mean, the whole journey is strange, right? The whole journey is really weird, but it was actually in between touring gigs that I was looking for ways to make money, basically. And I started doing some consulting in social media marketing for businesses. I got involved with some nonprofits and kind of threw myself headfirst into this world. I was like, I'm a pretty creative guy. I'm savvy with social media. I kind of grew up with social media becoming a thing with MySpace and stuff like that, kind of, throwing me into that world. I was very early in Facebook when Facebook came around, and I threw myself into that, started doing some social media consulting, found that I really liked it, got into the digital advertising world of things. And then it was just a few years later that I discovered Indiepreneur. And I saw Kyle, my business partner, actually on a Facebook ad. And I was like, I like this guy. He seems to know what's up. It seems like he knows what he's talking about. And this was like probably a month into Indiepreneur even having an offering of any kind, when Kyle was just starting to teach people a little bit about music marketing. He had a couple video courses that he had put out, and then he and I became friends and just started following each other's journey. And within about a year, we were talking, and he was like, hey, I'm going to start building this agency. I know you have experiences building agencies and doing agency work. Would you want to partner on this? And the rest is kind of history. That was back in between 2017 and 2018. And here we are almost 10 years later on this weird little twisting and turning journey, very creative. But I've always been a musician. And one thing that I really love about the work that I get to do now here at IndieX is, and I tell artists this all the time, it's a really important lesson. As creative people, you have such an unfair advantage to be able to take the creativity that you use to make your art and channel it into all the areas of your business, including your marketing. And I've been kind of like, I've seen the benefit of that firsthand myself, doing this with, tons of artists over the years now, and being able to take that same creative energy and spirit and applying it into this. You can do that too. And I think a lot of artists get hung up and they're like, well, I'm not into business. I'm not about the business. I'm not really a marketer. I don't know how to think about these things. But it's the same energy. It's the same creativity. You just need to apply it in a different direction, channel it in a different direction. And I can't stress enough how I really believe that artists have such an unfair advantage compared to everybody else out there when it comes to this kind of stuff, because you're so creative and you can do so much. And so that's one thing that I really believe. And I've seen that throughout my career so far as a creative person. Being able to channel that in this direction has just been very, very interesting, very cool, and it's been very powerful. So I always tell artists that, and I love to share that, hopefully, piece of wisdom, little nugget, because if I can do it, any artist can do it,
Good for you. Do you know, I've never heard anybody frame it quite like that before, but what you said there makes a whole heap of sense. It's creative energy and flow of an idea,
Yeah.
If an artist is coming up with ideas for songs, the ideation point, the arrangement point of, songwriting, production, whatever it might be. Yeah, it's just creativity and applying it to something ever so slightly different. Yeah, I love that. Actually, you are a fine example of that, because you've combined two things that are sort of seemingly different things, but yet kind of not as well, and then just funneled yourself between the two superbly. So well done, you. That's
No,
super.
thank
That
you.
is. Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you. Thank you.
It's
Thank you.
admirable. It's admirable. It really is. Final question for you, Jack. And it's a big one, really. But what changes would you like to see in the music business as we move forward towards the 2030s?
Ooh, that is a big question.
Sorry.
That's a good one. That's a good one. There's so many things. There are so many things that I would love to see. There are two that come to mind right away.
Okay.
One, and they're related. One is about artists and their ownership over their careers, over their businesses. I'd really love to see the music industry continue to move in a direction where artists have control over their businesses, over their revenue streams, without a lot of third parties in the middle. That's definitely something that is important to me because I've seen how, the pie gets so sliced up and it doesn't necessarily get bigger as it's getting sliced up for a lot of artists. And then all of a sudden you've got the people who are working the hardest and creating and trying to run the thing and being the face of it, really making nothing off of it. And so I think going into, the 2030s, I want to continue to champion for artists ownership over as much of their business as they can and giving away only where it really truly makes sense to have partnerships, only where it really, really makes sense to do that, where you know that someone is going to bring to the table something that you don't have and that it's going to be a lucrative partnership for everybody involved. And as a secondary piece of that, there's a lot of talk in the music industry, the concept of direct to fan right now. It's kind of become like a buzzword, but it's a flag that we've been waving at Indiepreneur here for nearly 10 years. And I think that it's really direct to fan is really powerful. We've talked plenty just today about all of the ways that you can connect with your fans, that you can sell to them, that you can go directly to them. But there is a risk right now that with this being such a buzzwordy term in music, it's very risky that now the third parties are going to come in and be like, oh, you can be direct to fan, but just buy my platform to get me, my cut of your direct to fan thing. You can have a direct to fan, music software that does X, Y, Z, A, B, C. We have to be really careful that as the direct to fan idea gets adopted, that it doesn't get diluted and kind of co-opted by the sort of regular industry players that have been, again, taking control of artists' careers for longer than really, or more than they really should be. And I think in saying that, it's really important for artists to be discerning about what they give up in the partnerships and the deals that they make. And that starts at the smallest level of just like, do I actually need a all-in-one music platform to connect with my fans, or do I just need a Shopify store like every other e-commerce brand uses?
Yeah.
These are the kind of things that I think are really important for artists to be thinking about. And the direction that I hope the music industry is going is more empowerment towards the artists, because they're the ones doing the thing. And I don't say that to shade managers or anybody else in the industry. Everyone plays their part. But I think if we're moving into a direction where the creatives are in control and then they're bringing in partners around them to support them and really run the business that way, we're going to have a much healthier music industry with a healthier middle class of artists in it, which, to date, we haven't really had. And so that's what I'm hoping we see.
Perfect answer. Yeah, I totally agree. And I think we're getting there as well, aren't we? We are starting to get there, and I think due in part to, and I'll say this, Jack, I hope this doesn't embarrass you, but due in part to people like you, because you are enabling that to happen.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
It's true, man. It's true. So, I appreciate you and your whole team and everything you're doing. And I appreciate you coming on here today to talk to me and share your wisdom, and good luck with everything you're doing going forward.
Oh, thank you so much, man. This was a blast, Johnny. These are great questions. I loved getting to nerd out with you about this stuff. This is super fun.
Good, healthy nerding. That's what we need more of in this business.
We love it. Great way to start a week.
Okay, so there you go. There you have it. Do you know, firstly, what a lovely guy, right? Really, really, really nice guy. So friendly, so warm. I bet he's really, really easy to work with. I bet he's an absolute pleasure to work with. Other people that I know of that have worked with him speak very highly of him. And you can see why, right? From how he gives an account of himself in this particular episode. I hope you learned a thing or two from listening to him. I know that I did, right? The way that he phrases things, the way that he kind of looks at music as a business, and it is, isn't it, right? It's weird, isn't it? One of the very things that underpins, my career and my relationship perhaps with you is my my quest to try and unravel the business behind music so that anyone can enter it, right? I often think that, when I was younger, I used to think that the doors in the music industry were kind of like closed, right? And I figured out, a little while back, that they're not actually. They're open to anybody that's brave enough to open that door and walk through, right? But you've got to know what to say when you get on the other side of the door, haven't you? You've got to know as well the stages beyond that. Like, what do I do about my rights? How do I funnel my marketing over here? How do I do this? How do I do that? And it can be really overwhelming, right? Hence why I'm here, trying to simplify things as much as I can. And I felt very aided in that quest today by Jack, because Jack puts things together in a very simplistic fashion, in a very kind and warm and charming way. So I hope you enjoyed some of the things that he had to say today. I know I did. Until next time, everybody, have a great day and may the force be with you.